Good afternoon, this is Clark Neighbors with BIS Commodities with the market recap for the week ending April 19th. In review for the week, corn down 8 cents, beans up 3 cents, wheat down 9 cents. Fairly choppy trade this week, some dynamics in regards to some breakout in the metals, which I'll talk to in a little bit, and or the energy market. And obviously some play via the wet weather that we're now experiencing in much of the Midwest. Keep in mind, in a week we will start deliveries against May futures, in a little over a week I should say. And some factors to keep in mind on that is we're seeing some flooding in the east that could have some slight logistical issues as far as moving the grain both off the farm and into the marketplace. The Illinois River right now is at an all-time high in some areas, which would slow down potential exports. Now that's more of a factor in soybeans right now than it is on corn. Beans, though, the issue in beans, processor has paid in upwards of $1 over the July futures. Incredible numbers. We are also seeing record inversions on the May-July bean spread. So the bean market continues to look very tight in the front. That's a key thing to watch as we go over the next few weeks, watching export sales numbers on soybeans, as that might have some influence on the spreads and basis levels going forward. From a gut feel, it feels like the amount of beans in the country, at least from a percentage standpoint, is quite a bit less than the corn. And at this point, that's something to watch. Weather this week, lots of rain in the especially the eastern half of the Corn Belt, flooding activity, so on. This is starting to have some influence on planting progress. Look at Monday's report. This coming Monday, we're going to be well behind a year ago, obviously, where we're off to at or near a record pace and below the 5-year average. But keep in mind, it's still late April. Key time to always watch on planting progress seems to be right around that May 10th time frame. That's a date where I think many of the market would like to see roughly half the U.S. corn crop in the ground, and that's 3 weeks away. So we'll see whether next week looks cool, but it does look a little drier at this point at the time of this taping. Now, what has changed in the last month I think is key. What has changed, one, is the weather. 30 days ago, still looking at a U.S. drought monitor map, there was concern as we go into the early growing season, especially in the western Corn Belt, about the continuation of the drought, especially Interstate 35 and west. The eastern Corn Belt had some changes that way. Keep in mind now, though, the drought story is pretty well behind us. It's not to say we can't have some hot, dry weather later this summer. That's always an issue. But as far as drought issues going into the planting season, looks like they're way, way behind us. The other thing that's changed in the last month, and this was changed pretty dramatically in the end of March, was the supply of corn, especially via the stocks report. Looking back a month ago, there was concern because of the tight stocks, because of the strong basis, because of at or near record inversions in the corn market. It may be tough to get to the new crop, and thus putting more pressure on the new crop. Now, after that report, after one more supply and demand update in April, it doesn't look like things are as tight. Again, gut feel, we mentioned there doesn't seem to be a lot of beans in the country right now to get a hold of. I think it's the opposite of the corn. There's corn available in the country. It's just a function of getting it to move. Marketing, because of these changes, because there's pretty dramatic changes in the weather in the last 30 days and the stocks, when you're looking at it, both from a producer standpoint, when you're looking at old crop corn, old crop beans, and also in the new crop, rallies in the next 30 to 60 days need to be sold. Now, I would have said in March, that time frame maybe is a little longer because of the drought situation, because of the stock situation. Those have changed. So the current weather pattern is supporting the market. It could end up being a little friendly to the market if it continues to be wet. But once that wet weather scare is behind us, now this market doesn't have as much to play with. So we really think if you potentially have some good little pops in this market over the next week, 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, to make some sales. We continue to see very, very lackluster new crop sales right now on both new crop corn and new crop beans, and that's concerning as we get closer to the growing season. The other thing to keep in mind is we've seen a pretty major, pardon the pun, meltdown in the metals over the last week and a half. Gold at one point was down nearly $200 over the last week plus. That's about 15% of the value of the product. Crude oil down $7 to $9 during that same time frame. Pretty tremendous liquidation, and the concern there is, are we starting to see a little more of the investment money coming out of commodities? And if that is the case, is there more of liquidation to happen in some of the other commodities, such as the grains? So definitely keep that in mind. Dollar was stronger this week, which may have helped encourage some of that break in the metals and the energies. This afternoon there was a cattle on feed report. Cattle on feed was 95%, pretty much in line with what the trade was looking for. Placements, though, at 106%, about 7% more on placed than what the trade was looking for. So a few more cattle in the feedlots, and marketing's at 92%. So that may be deemed a little bit bearish, the cattle market, come early next week. Feeder cattle made new contract lows today, and the entire meat complex, even though it has little windows of bounces, the meat complex continues to feel fairly heavy, both from a fundamental and a technical standpoint at this point. If you have any questions on any of these markets, feel free to call us at the office, 1-800-373-2525, or always BIScommodities.com on the web. Have a great weekend.